Okay, so I've got a couple things that I wanted to briefly talk about, but none of them on their own would be long enough to make a full video on, so I'm just kind of doing this sort of lightning round or rapid fire or whatever you want to say. But first, I actually did want to address a question that I've gotten in the comments of some of my videos about why I chose the name Rendar for my YouTube channel. And that's a good question.
Luke Skywalker goes undercover with Soldier of Fortune Rendar as he rips through space in his battle-transforming Outrider. But can they stop Slave One in time? It's the ultimate ships for the ultimate battle.
Well, I've always liked the Shadows of the Empire game on the N64, and I always thought it was so funny the degree to which Rendar is so transparently an off-brand, watered-down, diet low-carb, part-skim Han Solo created to keep his seat warm while he's frozen in carbonite. To me, he represents the nexus of 90s excess, EU excess, and the template for main characters in Star Wars games for decades to come. He's very clearly a product of his time, and there's a lot of charm in that. And this almost goes without saying, but the amount of Star Wars channels and podcasts and blogs and websites and everything, it can be hard to stand out. And I thought using this name, Rendar, might be a good way to stand out, in addition to the fact that I do like to cover more niche topics compared to other channels.
Pick up that Mexican!
I recently watched the Skywalker saga in the Machete Order, and it honestly didn't really change my whole perspective on the series or anything. The Machete Order, if you don't know, is where you watch the Skywalker saga out of order by breaking up the original trilogy and inserting the prequels between 4 and 5, and then between 5 and 6. As you can probably already tell, this Machete Order was developed before the sequel trilogy was released, so when I did it with all 9 films, I inserted 7 through 9 in with that as well. So the order I watched it was 4, then 1, 2, 5, 3, then to 7, 6, 8, and then 9. The idea behind it is that you're getting parts of the prequels and therefore Anakin and Obi-Wan's backstory while you're watching the original trilogy. Then, after the pivotal twist at the end of 5, I Am Your Father, you go back to 3 to see exactly how it all went down. Then, like I said, I started 7 right after 3 in order to create a sort of mystery for what happens in 6, and to sort of lead you on to continue to be invested in the rest of the story. It's an interesting idea, but execution of the prequels have too much foreshadowing that really gives away the big twists of the original trilogy, even in 1 and 2. And then the sequels, or at least episode 7, gives too much away from 6, that the withholding of information doesn't really work super well to facilitate this viewing order. I think that just watching the series in release order, so original trilogy, then prequels and sequels, accomplishes the same basic idea without having to jump back and forth between different movies. If you're going to show somebody Star Wars for the first time, whether it's your mom or your pastor or your bus driver or your deli guy, that's what I would recommend. I'd be curious to see if there are other viewing orders that people use for the Skywalker saga, and like I said, it probably wouldn't be very earth-shattering or change a whole lot about the way I saw the films or understood them, but I always think experiments like that are interesting. So, the 2015 Battlefront multiplayer servers are still online. I recently fired up the 2015 Battlefront on my PS4, and I was surprised to see that it actually still has a good amount of players. It's really been cool to see the redemption of the EA Battlefront games, especially Battlefront 2, and the community that is built up around them. I might talk about this in more detail later on, but I really am glad that these games and their online communities are still alive and well. Not much else I have to say, other than if you've been thinking about jumping into Battlefront for the first time, or getting back into it, then you'll have lots of people there to greet you. Okay, the last thing I wanted to mention is that I did watch the first episode of The Acolyte after all of the discourse died down. Basically after everybody else already made their videos on it. I poked my head out of the proverbial bunker to see where everybody was coming from with the show. I was still interested in the premise of the show, and as you might remember, I was looking forward to it before it came out. And so I watched the first episode to see where I stood on the most hated thing of 2024, Concord excluded. And I wasn't a huge fan. Obviously, the production value is good, the show looks great, and I think the cinematography was fine. My issue with the first episode was the acting. It honestly reminds me of the prequels, with performances that feel completely detached and uninterested. Now, you could argue that the Jedi characters during the time of the Republic, both High Republic and the Acolyte, and at the time of the prequels, are supposed to be detached and boring to avoid passion and attachments and whatever. Now, that would be fair if that issue didn't extend to all the other characters. I know there's exceptions in both projects, but I found that the characters generally weren't interesting to watch. It also doesn't help that the story, for the pilot episode at least, was very directly inspired by that Clone Wars arc The Wrong Jedi, which series creator Leslie Headland has specifically referenced as inspiration for the show. Look, I'm not denying the show has its fans, okay, but the way I see it, the show just being okay didn't bring out that many people to defend it in the face of people who make it a business out of hating the newest Star Wars thing anyways. So that was the general consensus of it. At least that's the way I see it. I mean, I might go back and finish it at some point, but I don't really have a strong desire or even curiosity to do so. Also, I haven't seen Skeleton Crew, but I've actually heard it's pretty good, so maybe I'll actually watch it within the year it releases, but we'll see about that.